You didn't quit. You're really like against all odds. You're doing something that no one in the family's done, that none of your friends have done.
I'm just gonna say the thing you're not supposed to say.
Whatever is mine is looking for me.
You have to know what road to take to get to your final destination.
Everything that you ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being patient. I am finally doing my America's Next Top Model deep dive. Now, like most of you, if you saw the title of this video, you see it says Unpopular. So I did a deep dive, meaning I did research beyond the documentary because there were things that I just wanted to learn. And like most of you on the internet, everyone is against Tyra. Everyone is just blaming Tyra. And this is where my unpopular opinion fits in. When you blame Tyra, it's intellectually lazy. When you just blame Tyra, it's intellectually lazy. Because when you really think about it, like even when you tie in the spiritual side of this show, it caused a spiritual and psychological warfare on young women and girls. We can get into the reasons behind that. But when you think of everything that's going on in the world, you kind of have to look at America's Next Top Model through a different lens, which would require you to have a bird's eye view on the entire operation. Because after doing my deep dive, it's an entire operation and it was intentional. So I wanted to do a deep dive on how intentional it was. And once I got into the deep dive, one of the things that I noticed was that this was an entire system. It was built off policies, rules, industry standards, and that also pushed control. So, my point is, and the reason why this is unpopular, but it's facts. If you were to remove Tyra Banks from the organization, from the industry, it would still operate just fine. It would still run just fine. So, the issues that people have with Tyra are the issues that you really have with the system. It's the issues that have been there for a very long time. Systemic control is at play, and it's something that it seems like no one really wants to focus on. So let's get into it because I decided to do a complete breakdown. And to me, America's Next Top Model reality check, to me, it's just a game of Monopoly where Tyra was on the board, but she was not the one controlling the game and she was not the one that set the rules. So let's get into this breakdown. So the Netflix docuseries quickly became a viral sensation. It serves as a three-part expose that re-examines the 24 season legacy of Tyra Banks. The iconic competition through a modern lens focuses on the lasting trauma experienced by former contestants. So, some things I'm going to highlight. The series featured rare, extensive interviews with creator Tyra Banks, who participated without editorial control. And we're going to get into the integrity of Netflix in this docu-series. This was probably like one of the first docu-series that I've seen where they could have added in other nuances and point of views and perspectives, but they chose not to. It was almost like there was an agenda to run with the narrative that social media created instead of actually digging a little bit deeper so that people could form their own opinion based off of all the facts and all the information. But it seemed like they had an agenda. And I'm going to get into why I believe that. I think Takara, she recently spoke out not that long ago, and she was saying that one of the reasons why she didn't believe she was asked to participate in the docuseries was because her experience with Tyra was positive. And in my opinion, a good documentary is just going to add in both sides. It's not to say that one isn't true over the other, it's just to form a nuanced perspective on the fact that maybe two things are true and that Takar's experience was positive, and then the rest of the contestants have negative experiences. But that's the part that I like because then it leaves it up to the viewers and we get to form our own opinion instead of just being fed a narrative and then that's it. So that was one thing that really stuck out to me, and it made me question the integrity, the agenda behind the docu-series. Why didn't they leave it up to us to decide who is the true villain by just providing the information? And if there are other women on the show that had a positive experience, why not add that in? I don't think it takes away from the other contestants that had negative experiences. So I didn't really like that. So I do question the integrity of the docu-series, but let me continue. So Tyra Banks, who participated, she did not have any editorial control. It also includes the J's, Miss J. Alexander, J. Manuel, the photographer Nigel Barker, and several former contestants. So within this documentary, the documentary revisits the show's most controversial moments, specifically around body shaming. Oh my God, the body shaming was insane. Racial insensitivity and humiliation rituals disguised as modeling challenges, which some of those modeling challenges, in my opinion, they were a little much. I mean, a lot of them were, I don't even want to say they were a little much. They were a lot. They were a lot to watch. They were a lot to witness. The blackface was such a wild uh, challenge to watch on TV. And we have to get into why was that not called out? Why all of a sudden is it being called out now? Why wasn't it called out over 20 years ago? Also, I felt like it was weird when they posed with the children. I thought that was very odd as well. I mean, they had some very questionable things that took place in America's Next Top Model. Some of the stuff I do remember, some of the stuff I don't remember. And unfortunately, I did not go back and rewatch America's Next Top Model. So this is where I want to kind of branch off. I'm going to be hopping around a little bit because I want you to get a clear understanding of why Tyra is not the only one to blame. I do believe that Tyra has some accountability, and when we place accountability, when I place accountability on someone, it starts with the role that they played. Whatever role Tyra played in a contestant or really anyone on set that had a negative experience, an abusive experience, a traumatic experience, that is what Tyra is accountable for, in my opinion. However, what I'm seeing on social media, it just seems like everyone is putting the blame on Tyra. And again, if we remove Tyra, the industry still continues to run in the way that it's always ran. Reality TV continues to exploit people psychologically, like it doesn't stop. So to blame Tyra is just very lazy to me. So let's get into the monopoly. So, first, let me give you the definition of monopoly. It's exclusive ownership through legal and financial privilege, command of supply, and planned action. So, some things that people are confused about when it comes to Tyra is that technically she didn't have full ownership of her own show. Now, I know a lot of you are currently upset at Amanda Seals, and I happen to agree with her as well. If you haven't been following, which we're going to get into that as well, Amanda Seals called out Ryan Coogler, and the reason for that is because she's speaking facts. You know, I find it interesting how people are defending Ryan Coogler against Amanda Seals, but people are shaming Tyra Banks. Interesting, because she's in the same industry. They're in the same industry. They have to abide by the same rules. So you condemn Tyra, but you uplift Ryan Coogler, and it's like, well, everyone is saying, well, you have a set of rules and you have to abide by the set of rules, and then that opens doors. Well, Tyra opened doors. She did. She changed the modeling industry. She merged two industries with two different set of rules together and she created a show. She merged the modeling industry and she merged reality TV. Those two industries together, they came with a set of rules. So when people get upset at Amanda Seales, it's very interesting to me. So let's get into the breakdown of the ownership that Tyra has when it comes to America's Next Top Model. Now, based off of my understanding, Tyra owns Top Model. She does not own America's Top Model. She owns Top Model. It is a template, it's a format, it's a show that she created. So, one thing that you've noticed is you've noticed the international franchise of Top Model. And it's because you have countries, well, you have people in other countries like Germany, Canada, that wanted to produce Top Model, like Germany Top Model, Canada Top Model. We've seen a remix of America's Next Top Model. They ended up buying Tyra's template for Top Model, and then they remixed it and they produced it. So when we say Tyra is accountable, right? Is Tyra also accountable for selling her brand, her template, her format, Top Model, and allowed people in other countries to produce it? Is she also accountable for those shows as well? The things that went on set, offset, the environment around the set, or whatever may have happened with the girls and those contestants as well? Because technically, they bought her brand, they bought her template, they bought the creation of her show, she sold it to them, and then they decided to produce it. Now, the same format is under America's Next Top Model. So Tyra created the template, she created the format, she sold it to UPN. Now, this is the interesting thing about Tyra selling her show to UPN. They were considered to be a partner. So she had to get on a network. Everyone has to get on a network. So when we think of Ryan Coogler, I believe his movie Sinners is technically owned by Warner Brothers. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's Warner Brothers. And within 25 years, after 25 years, he'll actually own the picture. Right now, he only owns the story. He only owns how he produced it, but he doesn't actually own the picture because it was partnered, or he decided to partner with Warner Brother. So the same thing with Tyra. She partnered with UPN. She partnered with Viacom. That is who she decided to partner with. So she had some control, but she didn't have full control. So I wanted to get into that really quick because that makes a huge difference when we talk about who is really the one to blame when it comes to America's Next Top Model and the different things that happen. You can also use the example of McDonald's, the global franchise. So McDonald's, you'll see it overseas all the time. That was also another template that was sold, and then it was also created as a franchise within other countries. And if you go to other countries, they do have like your basic burgers on the menu, but they also have other items on the menu that you can't get here in the US. So that's kind of how you would explain America's Next Top Model and the top model format that Tyra sold under her production company called Bankable Productions. Okay, so let's get into, which I felt was kind of interesting. I wanted to pull up the network because this is the part that I feel like people are kind of downplaying. And we have to get into the glass cliff that Black women are placed into as well. And we have to get into Les Moonves, which was slightly mentioned in the documentary, but they could have did a deep dive on him because the information that I found out about Les Moonves, it also makes me question the integrity of the documentary as well. You had one person. Okay, so y'all know we have to cover this. I have to cover this up just a little bit because the copyrights, they may get me. Let me go ahead and put on. Okay, So, and then it's so crazy because the hierarchy is being exposed within America's Next Top Model. You have, hold on, can y'all see me? You have the white man right here, and then you have the white woman, and then you have the Asian man, and then you have the black woman. And the black woman, she's supposed to come in and she's supposed to save the day because UPN's network, the network was in a crisis with low ratings. So Tyra had to pull off the impossible, like Olivia Pope, and she had to come in and she had to make her show a success. She had the ratings on her back because it depended on whether or not UPN would make it, which is not talked about. So let's get into this.
If you had one person of a different color, that was their definition of diverse. That was not my definition or Tyra's definition of diversity. We had to do the.
So Viacom right here, that's who she decided to partner with to produce her show. So one thing that I also want to mention as well, that did you hear about how they wanted more black and brown girls on the show, but because of Les Moonves, who at the time was the CEO of UPN, was like, no, or okay, we'll take the black woman, but no, you can't take the brown girl. Like we don't want the brown girl. So there was a lot of push and pull with that. Then you also have to understand too that Tyra was also stepping into a new industry. Like she had left, well, she was still a little bit in the modeling industry, but she was entering into the entertainment business and she was entering into television as well. So there's a set of rules that come with that as well. Like you have the modeling industry now, and now you have TV and you have entertainment and you have an industry that has a set of rules as well. And also, she's a black woman where oftentimes people are always trying to make it seem like we don't belong there. So how is she supposed to prove that she belongs in this environment, in TV, in reality TV, if she's first starting off? And this is her first time. This is her first show. This is her first show that she's producing for herself. Like, how is she supposed to fit in and make it and make it known that, you know, she can handle her position, she belongs here, she belongs, or she deserves to have this opportunity. So there was a lot of that going on as well. And yes, that matters because oftentimes when black women are in that executive seat, there's a lot riding on us to prove ourselves and to make it known that we can do the job that we were hired to do or partnered to do. So there was a lot of that was going on as well.
Final casting with the president of Viacom, the parent company of CBS and UPN, a guy named Les Moonves.
How are the ratings on the other networks? Well, I think we have more new shows that are working than the other guys do. So,
arguably the most powerful man in Hollywood.
So this was her boss. And it's crazy how people downplayed Les. Oh no, it's crazy how the documentary downplayed Les Moonves. His real name is Leslie, which I felt was kind of interesting. But Les Moonves. So I was like, who is this guy? And why is he like the shot caller? And you know, the more I got into the research to do this video, you'll quickly find out that the main people that are pulling the strings behind the scenes are all white men. All of them. All of them. And Les Moonves just happens to be one of those men. Very powerful. A lot of them are the Z word. If you know, then you know. With everything that's going on, I feel like that's currently being exposed, you know, with entertainment. So it's the Z word. It's white men at the very top. They're the ones that are actually pulling the strings. But he was the one that denied Tyra the chance to offer a black woman and a black and a brown girl on the show, which I felt that was interesting. Now, remember, this is Tyra's show, right? But she has a boss. This is her boss. He said no. He said no. Somehow the black girl and the brown girl were able to get on the show. I'm not sure how Tyra pulled that off. Not sure what they did to convince him, but he was the one that was calling the shots from behind the scenes. And the reason why I'm singling him out and why it matters is because not that long ago, he was accused of sexually assaulting several women. And it was so interesting that Netflix didn't include that because I feel like that's pretty important considering what the women were accusing him of. So we're going to get into that.
We really wanted a Hispanic Latina girl on the show, and he did not want this Latino girl on the show.
What the hell? I lost it.
Tyra was arguing with Les to the point it almost got physical.
How dare you? Do you understand? And if you want to talk business, let's talk business.
I don't understand why this part was downplayed so much. I don't understand why it was downplayed so much.
Pull back right now. It's Les Moonves. Let's not torpedo the show before we even get it on the air. We had to replace her.
Then we went searching again, and we found Giselle. Take one.
Okay, so that was what Tyra was up against when it came to certain decisions about inclusion. Also, probably respectability politics was part of the reason because she was under the same scrutiny, she was under the same pressure. And I don't think people actually acknowledge that because when you have that man above you, then you already know what type of rules are up that you're up against. So there's only so much that you can do. You can try to push back, but if you push back too much, then you could lose your own position. So that's the game that she was playing in this entire operation. So let's get into Les Moonves. Let me pull up the recent allegations.
Now, new allegations of sexual harassment and misconduct at CBS at the highest levels and the culture that allowed the behavior. That is the focus of an investigation by the New Yorker magazine that is out this evening. It reports that Leslie Moonves, the CEO of CBS and one of the most powerful people in entertainment, allegedly kissed and touched women against their will. The cases go back to the 1980s. The article also alleges that Moonves physically intimidated two women or threatened to derail their career.
Oh no. Okay, let me try to fix that. Did you hear derail careers? Did you hear that? Let me see if I can fix it. Okay, I don't know what that was about. Did y'all hear that? Did you hear that?
Producer Jeff Fager allowed it to go on there and at CBS News. Famed program 60 Minutes alleges that Moonves physically intimidated two women or threatened to derail their careers. The article also alleges sexual harassment at its famed program 60 Minutes and said that its executive producer, Jeff Fager, allowed it to go on there and at CBS News. Moonves has denied any assault and said he never misused his position to harm anyone's career. CBS says there had been no misconduct claims or settlements against Moonves. Ronan Farrow, the writer, is again the writer and reporter on this story.
That was who Tyra was working for. Okay. That is who Tyra was working for. So what I'm saying is, do you really think Tyra had that much leadway after selling her show, after selling her top model format, her top model template to UPN, and then this is the man that she has to work for? Do you really think she had that much pushback? I don't think so. Okay. I'm going to play this a little bit more and then I'm going to get into what he actually ended up doing because it states here in 2022 he and CBS paid 30.5 million in a settlement for concealing allegations and misleading investors. So that was around the time that all of this was going on. And I wonder, why didn't Netflix include this in their documentary? Why?
And he joins me now. Ronan, spell out for us, what did you find? What are the main allegations against Les Moonves?
Over the course of 8 months, Judy, 6 women did an incredibly tough thing, overcoming what they described as profound fear of retaliation, to tell me about a range of sexual misconduct, up to and including 2 cases that both of those women described as sexual assault, in which they both said they were pinned down and had to struggle to escape an encounter.
I can see.
And what's important here, Judy, is that they're speaking about this because they were concerned there was a culture of impunity around Les Moonves. And dozens of other employees, former and current, across CBS backed up that account and said that the company knew about charges of harassment and retaliation, and that Mr. Moonves continued to promote some of the men at the heart of those allegations.
What can you tell us about who is making these charges?
So these are obviously sources who went through a long process of struggling with whether to come forward and what the ramifications would be for their careers. They include, for the women making allegations against Mr. Moonves specifically, the actress and writer Ileana Douglas, the writer Janet Jones, the producer Christine Peters. These are people with prominent careers in Hollywood.
I'm going to ask y'all again. Why do you think Netflix did not include this in the documentary? We're not talking about assistants here. We're not talking about, the boots on the ground running type of interns. We're talking about producers. This is who Tyra was working for, and she was under a lot of pressure because the network was in a crisis with low ratings, and it was up to her to save the network. Her show was supposed to save the network. So it just, I don't know, it seems like, blaming Tyra for everything seems orchestrated. It seems intentional. And like I said, it's intellectually lazy, because I'm just like, wait a minute. Does Tyra have some things to be accountable for? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the entire operation, that is insane. That is absolutely insane.
Who are formidable in their own rights. But they all said that they feared that their careers had been profoundly damaged after they rebuffed Mr. Moonves' advances.
Let me share with our audience the statement that we just received from Les Moonves, and I believe we're going to put it up on the screen. He said, "I recognize that there were times decades ago when I may have made some women uncomfortable by making advances. Those were mistakes, and I regret them immensely. But I always understood and respected and abided by the principle that no means no, and I have never misused my position to harm or hinder anyone's career." So he is saying, yes, that there may have been actions that were misunderstood, but not what your reporting suggests.
And obviously, anytime there's a story like this, the commitment here is to fairness, and that statement from Mr. Moonves is prominently in that article. And we explored every aspect of his response to this and CBS's response. These are women backed by, in some cases, multiple eyewitness accounts, multiple people they told at the time, trails of paper, for instance. In Ileana Douglas's case, there was a settlement with CBS after this incident. She said she was fired for this incident. So this does appear to be, and is described by many of these sources, as a pattern, and it extends both to Mr. Moonves and also, as I said, to some of these executives that he championed and promoted, like Jeff Fager, who ran the news division under him for a time and now runs 60 Minutes.
And in fact, in the article you write, you say that 30 current and former CBS staffers said the behavior extended beyond Moonves to the corporation, including CBS News and 60 Minutes. And of course, its executive producer was Jeff Fager. So what did you find about the corporate culture, the culture at CBS News?
over and over again, individuals ranging from assistants up to powerful executives at the company said that they knew of instances in which people had complained of harassment and there had been no negative repercussions for powerful men who were the subject of those allegations, and indeed in which women making those allegations were managed out of their jobs. Now, look, when you talk...
The reason I'm pointing this out is because Tyra got a lot of scrutiny for not being more transparent, maybe even a little bit more like some people said that she came across out of touch. And after doing this deep dive, I now understand that Tyra came across more business savvy in this documentary because she had to walk on eggshells about what she said, how she said it, who she talked about, that she couldn't just be 100% transparent because she's still in the industry till this day. She has bankable productions. She doesn't want to be blackballed in the industry because she also mentioned how she wants to reboot America's Next Top Model. So she played her cards very close to her chest. And I think people wanted a more wholesome, down to earth, transparent Tyra, but she knew that she had to address this documentary and the allegations that were going to be presented in this documentary a certain type of way. And I think people were upset with her about that, but I don't think people are considering the corporate side of her position within America's Next Top Model and just her overall brand of top model and how that could affect her in the long run when it comes to anything she's launching, any type of business deal that she's launching or anything like that. And that was the main reason Jay Manuel, he was so afraid to leave because he thought that he was going to get blackballed in the industry. So it's like, it's kind of crazy how, everyone is blaming Tyra, but who's the one that's really pulling the strings? Who is the one that is creating these predatory contracts? And that was another thing that everyone talked about, the predatory contracts that the contestants were under. But did you ever consider that maybe Tyra was under a similar predatory contract? Maybe that is the reason why she felt like she had to agree to certain things that she didn't want to agree to. But just because Tyra is a part of the power dynamic, it doesn't mean that she has the same access of power compared to the people that she's working under. And I think people kind of looked that. And I felt like that was kind of interesting because I'm like, okay, Tyra definitely had these girls in predatory contracts, but I also believe that she was under one as well.
Talk to dozens and dozens and dozens of people around a corporation, you get all the sides of the story. And there are certainly people at this company that have had good experiences, and there are certainly divisions that are not as affected by these kinds of allegations. But there are a significant number of occurrences here, and they are manifested in litigation and in internal processes and in a string of NDAs, Judy, non-disclosure agreements that we obtained and reviewed, that suggests that at every level of this company, there were people complaining about a culture of impunity.
So what does that say? I mean, what are you saying you believe, based on your reporting, was going on there? That the word was going out from people at the very top that this kind of behavior is acceptable?
I think, you and I have both worked in large organizations in the news business and in media. It is rarely that overt, Judy, but certainly people said that, by example, there were powerful men who were engaged in this kind of behavior, who were subject to allegations that were widely known, and who were continually promoted in spite of that. And that does have a powerful effect on corporate culture. We talked to in this story multiple experts and lawyers who try sexual harassment cases who said, the culture at the top really does set the tone and really can have echoes throughout even a corporation as large as CBS. So we're careful not to draw any speculative inferences here, but I can say that there are are a large number of these cases across this company. And I think this story is important because it affords us an opportunity to look at not just a fallen producer like a Harvey Weinstein, someone who used to be in a position of apex power, but a company that still is in a position of primacy and is a really important institution, Judy.
And finally, Ronan, I see that CBS corporate put out a statement that the independent directors have committed to investigating these claims. Is it your understanding that they are going to follow up on your reporting?
They say that in that statement, and I think that that will be a source of cautious optimism for a lot of the sources in this story, but also a source of some skepticism because these are claims that in some cases people have been trying to report within this company and without for years.
And right now, Les Moonves still occupies the position of CEO, is that right?
That's correct.
All right.
So I wanted to add that in there. As of today, he resigned from his position. He was chairman and CEO, and he left back in September of 2018 following the accusations. However, he was never criminally convicted due to expired statutes of limitations. So basically, he got off. If I'm just being honest, based off of um the lack of resource that those women could get access to due to, I believe, the industry in itself, and then also the law could not help them or support them because of the statute of limitations. So that is what those women were up against. But of course, he denied those accusations and still denies them till this day. So I wanted to talk about uh, the ideology, the belief, because this is huge in my opinion. Um, when we talk about the industry, everyone talks about the industry, and it's like, oh, well, this happens in the industry, this goes on in the industry. And this creates belief. Like, this is what a lot of people are kind of overlooking when it comes to what was really exposed in America's Next Top Model. So back then, there, and I still feel like it still exists today, because we will say, well, that's social media, or that's just the industry, or that's just what you have to do. Like, we kind of normalize it in a way because we have the ideology, which is a belief. Like, we believe this. So in the most subtle form of control, it happens through belief. It happens when people who are being controlled start to believe that the system's rules are just the way things are, or they're for your own good. And so a lot of times when we think about, back then, and then we fast forward to today and we're like, why was that okay? Why was that so normalized? It was normalized because people believed that that is what you had to do. That is what you had to go through in order to get fame, in order to get the opportunity to be a part of a very vain industry. And that's another thing that I feel like, I don't know if it's Gen Z because you're younger and maybe you didn't grow up during that time and you weren't able to see that time and be there and see it for yourself, or be a part of it, or like truly experience it. But America's Next Top Model and just the model industry within itself is a very vain industry. It's always been a vain industry. It's never been wholesome. It's never been like down to earth or anything like that. It's always been vain. It was built off of vanity. It was never built off of being wholesome. It wasn't built off of personality. It wasn't built off of being different. It was built off of fitting a mold, and that was what was being reinforced. And this is why a lot of people during that time had the belief, well, this is what you have to do. Like, this is what it takes. Even the contestants, because I can understand, you're sitting back as a contestant, you're watching cycle one, right? You don't really know what to expect. Those girls that signed up for cycle one, cycle two, most likely didn't really know what they were signing up for. But cycle 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, there was a belief there that this is what they had to do to make it. Okay. So I wanted to point that out. So in the show, they convinced aspiring models that being publicly shamed is necessary training for a tough industry. when the victim accepts the abuse, because that's what that is. That was abuse. To be publicly shamed is abuse. When the victim accepts the abuse as mentorship, the control is complete. And this is where cultural norms are created. So my issue with Tyra, even though I don't feel like she's the only one to blame, she should be the one that should be held to the highest level of accountability. I don't really agree with that. But when it comes to Tyra, she abused the position and the persona of being a mentor. I'm a mentor, and I have very strong boundaries for this very reason. People don't agree with them, but I have the boundaries that I have because it's so easy to be in that mentorship position and weaponize that position against the very people that you're trying to help, you're advocating for. And they look to you for that type of assistance, support. They look to you for clarity. They look to you for different things, and you weaponize that against them, and you do it for your own personal gain. You do it so that you can elevate yourself. And that's what was so disgusting about Tyra. That's the main accountability that I feel like Tyra needs to take, because that's not the role that she had to play. She could have played the boss and kept it at that, but she chose to play the mentorship role. And it was because she was able to get access to their psychology. She was able to get access to their mentality and how they were thinking. And she was able to weaponize that against them. She was able to weaponize their vulnerability, their self expression, things that they probably were insecure about, things that they were afraid of. She was able to get in their mind, and she was able to use the information that she gathered against them in a way to produce her show. So that's the part that I feel was very disgusting. And, when it comes to fame, when it comes to being a celebrity, even when it comes to being a content creator, there always comes that point in a person's journey where they either choose money and their ego, or they choose integrity. And I believe that Tyra chose ego and money when she could have chose her integrity. I'm on mute? I don't think I'm on mute. So that was the thing that I think a lot of people are upset about. I think the girls that are mainly upset with Tyra isn't just how she treated the girls, but it's the fact that a lot of women looked up to Tyra. A lot of women looked at Tyra as an inspiration. She opened up doors for Black women. She advocated for Black women in the space of modeling. She did a lot of different things that made it seem like she was for the betterment of women. But when her integrity was tested, she chose ego. She chose ego. I think in the beginning, when she first started off, I think she was more naive. I don't really think she knew what she was really getting herself into. But I think that once she found out that this is what you have to do to make it, to be successful, to be seen as, um, I guess, a part of the entertainment industry, I think that she kind of gave in to things. One of the nastiest things that I think Tyra could have done was the Shanny situation, where she invited Shanny onto her show, the Tyra Banks show, and she once again exploited that situation that happened in the hot tub. And I felt like, okay, Tyra, like, here you are on your show. This is your name. It's on the front of your show and everything. And you sat there and you exploited Shanny's situation. And at that point, you were well aware of the situation and what happened. And you exploited her again for ratings and for TV. And that's the thing. It's like, Tyra, at certain points, you could have chose integrity and you didn't. And that's the thing that made me upset. Okay, so the next thing that I also want to talk about, because America's Next Top Model, it really came across like Hunger Games. And the reason it came across like Hunger Games is because if you look at it from an economic lens, it created dependency. So they picked a lot of girls that were young, that came from low income households. And I felt like that was intentional as well, because it's easy to exploit people that are in a very vulnerable place and they're in a state of dependency when it comes to finances. And the thing that really threw me off the thing that really threw me for a loop was there were times where I felt like they could have chose. Well, first I want to say this. J. Manuel, there were constant comments about girls working at McDonald's fast food or like Walgreens or something like that. Like they would constantly make those comments. And I'm just thinking to myself, these girls are so young. Where are they supposed to work? Are they supposed to work? I don't know. Like, are they supposed to have like some serious job? These girls were like 20, 19, 20 years old, 20, 21. I'm like, I think them working at Walgreens uh, is a normal job. Like that's a normal job to have at that age. So I didn't understand that. But I did peep that I'm like, wow, a lot of these girls were coming from living situations where they were staying at home with their parents still, they were roommating, they were struggling. And so they looked to America's Next Top Model as their way out, as their way out to chase their dreams or accomplish their dreams. So when we talk about dependency, through the economic lens, the systemic control often relies on financial leverage. So this is the thing. This is where again the nuance comes in when it comes to me looking at Tyra. So that leverage, that financial leverage, which is also a part of the monopoly game, right? That financial leverage was over the contestants. Tyra was over the contestants. She had that financial leverage, right? So she had that carrot dangling over them. But then also Tyra had that financial leverage dangling over her. And then when you think of Ken, who was the Asian man, Monk, he also had that financial leverage hanging over him. But who was hanging over Ken? It was the former president. I believe her name was Dawn Ostroff. She was the Caucasian woman. She had that financial leverage over Ken, the Asian man. And who do you think had the leverage at the very top? I don't need to continue, right? So when we talk about the dependency, right, the systemic control, you'll see that there's a hierarchy in place. The contestants are at the very bottom. Now, if you've been following me for a while, I've been doing the conspiracy theories. I've talked about the pyramid. I talked about how systems can exist within systems. So, one of the systems that was exposed to me through America's Next Top Model that I've been talking about through my conspiracy theories is the fact that the contestants would be considered the slaves of the hierarchy, would be considered the slaves. And then Tyra, the black woman, she's the threshold. She's like right at the base before you go back to being the slave. She's and the slaves are debt slaves. So you are a slave to the credit system, right? Because you are financially dependent. And when it comes to Tyra, she was at that top threshold. Like she just barely made it above that. And then she also had to experience systemic control, which was the whole reason why she had to partner with UPN, the network, because she couldn't launch the show on her own. She did not have the financial leverage. So my point is there's a hierarchy. And I feel like it's intellectually lazy to just put all the blame on Tyra when she's just sitting right above the debt slaves, like literally barely made it, got her foot in the door. And she's not even getting equal opportunities as her counterparts or other people that have that financial leverage over her. So she's on the monopoly board, but she really doesn't have that much control because she doesn't have the financial leverage. Even though she's a celebrity, even though she's the face of the brand and all of that, at this point, I think 2026 and 2025, 2024 has really exposed that you can walk the red carpet and still be struggling financially. Like that is a real thing. Or you could be the face of something and still not be paid the same as someone as like a Les Moonves. Like like there's a hierarchy here. And so when it comes to me, I'm like, okay, there's a hierarchy. Why are we just blaming Tyra? Because there's an entire operation here. So when we talk about systemic control, again, back to that financial leverage, if the system controls your ability to earn a living, which Tyra was under that same control, it controls your behavior. So, what a lot of people don't want to acknowledge is that Tyra was also a victim. She was a victim, but she was also an abuser. Like, that's just facts. She was a victim as well. Um, so, again, she most likely was under a predatory contract just as well as the contestants with the women on the show. So, when we talk about predatory contracts, claims that a percentage of a person's future earnings was dictated based off of the contract itself, which we're going to get into. So the individual is legally bound to the system even after they leave the physical environment. And that was exposed as well. It's another reason I believe that Tyra wasn't as transparent as I felt like she could have been. But if you look at her here, you see a different Tyra.
Why did you quit modeling so young? You felt that, hey, I don't need to do this. I can become a producer?
Yeah, I felt like I was doing my talk show. You know, I was doing America's Next Top Model, and I felt like...
Whose idea was America's Next Top Model?
100% mine. I created it.
You created the show?
100%.
It's like the American Idol of modeling.
100%. It's in 170 countries, and I own a piece of all of that.
Why do you only own a piece? How much of a piece do you own?
Because I have a network. I have a partner, I have a network. I have...
So when you're a producer of America's Top Model, it's a big payday, right?
It's very nice.
How much of that show do you own?
It changed my life.
How much of the show do you own?
I can't say how.
You own 25%. I'll say it.
How do you know?
Because I know. I know these things.
Pretty good.
Yeah. You own
I'm not confirming it.
You own 25% of America's Top Model. How much money does America's Top Model generate?
It's, you know, on reruns in 170 countries, and then we have the international.
Only 25%. And then this is another thing too, based off of my research, Tyra doesn't own the film. Let me pull it up. She doesn't own the footage. She does not own that. She owns the template and the format. So the 25% that she's referring to is the top model template, the top model format, but she doesn't own the footage, which is why Tyra can't just go and delete cycle 2 or cycle 3. Like, she can't delete those cycles because she can't. She doesn't own it. UPN does, or CW or Viacom. You know, let me just go all the way up to the top. Viacom. She actually does not own it outright. Okay, so the breakdown that this production, America's Next Top Model, it's owned partially through Bankable Productions, which is Tyra Bank, which he estimated about 25%, and then the rest is between 10 by 10 Entertainment, which is Ken Malk, which we're going to get back to him in a sec. And then the Pottle production, which is they own the trademark and the copyright. So if they strike this video, well, not this video, Netflix will probably strike this video, but I'm saying like the older footage from America's Next Top Model, or any of the footage really, they would copyright my video and I would see Pottle Productions copyright. So it wouldn't be Tyra Banks, it wouldn't be Bankable Productions that would copyright it, because she didn't copyright the film. She didn't have access to it. She didn't own the actual film. So she can't just go and remove or refuse to play the show because it's traumatizing and she didn't like how she appeared on there and things like that. But another thing too, based off of my research. So Ken, which is the Asian man, he was over the logistics. So there were parts in the documentary where Tyra is saying, "Oh, I didn't even know that that was going on. I wasn't really made aware of that." There is some truth to what she's saying. I don't believe that Tyra didn't know anything. I believe she knew some things, but I also believe that part of her being the brand in the face, that there were things that were withheld from her on purpose because it's reality TV, and she was also the face and she was also on the show as a mentor. So there were things that I'm sure that she was not made aware of. Also, Ken was the one that was running the set. Like, he was the one that was over the competitions, the challenges, and things like that. He was also responsible for also hiring people that would take care of the contestants, that would also keep eye on them and keep things on set organized. It really wasn't Tyra, because Tyra most likely was in hair, she was in makeup, she was getting ready to go on camera with the girls. So when it comes to that part of the documentary, there is some truth to it. It's just we don't know how much truth. Like, how much was Tyra unaware of and how much was she actually made aware of? I feel like it's kind of up in the air. But Ken Mock, he was the one that knew more than Tyra, because he was the one that was over the logistics of the set. Like, he was the head man in charge when it came to the operations, everything that was going on set. And I felt like that was not highlighted enough. And it just seemed like Tyra got the heat more because it was her face and it was her brand. But again, she had already sold it to the network. So she was under contract. So there were things that she probably had to agree to when it came to her brand, when it came to Top Model, that maybe she wasn't all that comfortable with. We're not really sure.
National version. So we have like Germany's Next Top Model. Heidi Klum hosts that version.
Right.
We have Canada's Next Top Model. Mr. J from America's Next Top Model hosts that one.
Do you hire all those
Elle
people?
McPherson hosts the British one. No, I don't hire them. I sell the rights.
Right.
And then they hire whoever.
You
but
own the franchise. It's like a McDonald's. You sell it to them. They go out and they produce it, and good luck to them.
Yeah, exactly. If I own McDonald's, I'm not going to care who's managing it.
It's
Are there
fantastic.
certain rules they have to follow? Like
Yes.
there's a template?
Yes,
or
if they
something?
use the brand.
That's what I was trying to tell y'all. I tried to tell you that Tyra was in a predatory contract herself. But because she's famous, because she's rich compared to the debt slaves that are in the credit cycle, right? The 40 hours a week working at Walgreens, because she was being compared to them and she wasn't being compared to her counterparts as executive producer and being a black woman, people are overlooking the fact that she was in a predatory contract herself. And I'm just like, why did the documentary not highlight that part? I don't even think Tyra would have talked about it, to be honest, because again, that means that she would be blackballed in the industry. So her production company wouldn't even be successful. It's a dirty game. You see why Amanda Seales said what Amanda Seales said? And black people are like, she need to shut up. She don't even know what Amanda Seales knows exactly what she's talking about. She was blackballed. She knows exactly what she's talking about. So there's a lot of politics going on, a lot of corporate energy going on, and there is also a lot of rules which comes with a lot of control. And I felt like at times Tyra really didn't have that much control as people are trying to make it seem, or they're trying to make it out to be. Especially when you have an Asian man that's over you, a white woman that's over you, and the final say is the white man. It's like, what do y'all want her to do for real? That's what I want to know. And I was like, what does y'all want her to do? She couldn't do much if she's in this predatory contract because of her brand. And this is what they're saying is expected of her, because this is reality TV. We have ratings, we have numbers that we have to meet. I'm pretty sure at times there were plenty of things that Tyra did not agree with. But again, she was integrating a vain industry like modeling. Modeling was vain. Okay? It was not this wholesome energy in that industry. And that's what's kind of pissing me off. But when people feel like modeling back then, it wasn't this vain industry. It's like everyone knew what they were signing up for if they wanted to become a model back then. It was a very vain industry. Today, it's different. But guess who changed that? Guess who actually made that change happen? Tyra Banks. Guess the whole reason Olandria is able to go to Fashion Week in Milan, Fashion Week in Paris, is because, hello, Tyra Banks opened that door for her. Tyra Banks opened the door. Unfortunately, if you were a girl that came on America's Next Top Model in cycle 1, in cycle 2, in cycle 3, because the show was kind of getting off the ground, you didn't get the full benefit of being on America's Next Top Model. But when you think of like Winnie Harlow, I think that's her name, Winnie Harlow. She is huge, but she also came from America's Next Top Model. But Tyra opened that door through reality TV, where now reality stars like Olandria will get invited to Paris and Milan, or I'm sorry, Fashion Week in Milan, Paris Fashion Week. You know, Olandria is getting invited to all of those places because Tyra Banks opened the door. She is the reason why plus size models are getting opportunities. She is the reason why regular people are able to walk in Paris Fashion Week. You don't have to be what was the height requirement? I think it's like what 5'10" and up. You don't have to be like a certain height and all of that. And then it used to be back in the day, the industry was so strict that they didn't allow reality TV stars to be a part of Fashion Week at all. They did not allow that whatsoever. Whatsoever. They did not allow that. So I'm like, did Tyra fulfill her purpose? Technically, she did because she changed the industry. So a lot of your faves, like I even saw, I think her name is Leah from season 6 of Love Island. She's over there because of Tyra. So y'all bashing this girl to death, and I'm just like, listen, she got a lot to be accountable for. I'm not gonna ever take that away because I feel like how you choose to show up, that represents yourself and your character. So there are some questionable things that Tyra did. However, when it came to her dream, when it came to her purpose, she did fulfill it. She did. Jenner, she wouldn't have been able to be this huge, big time model if it wasn't for Tyra Banks opening that door. And I feel like a lot of people are not listening to Tyra because they just want to villainize her. But she literally said that when she was a model entering into the industry, she was Black and there were no tables for her to sit at. She had to create her own table. And she did that. She created Top Model. She created a table. And all the girls are eating off of that table right now. Olandria, Leah, hell, all of the Kardashians, they're eating off her table that she created. And I feel like no one is talking about that. Of course, the documentary kind of highlighted it a little bit, but did you see how they cut from Tyra saying what she was saying and then they cut right into Dany? Or she was like, girl, please. Yeah, that was intentional as well.
They have to follow template.
Has anyone ever been on America's Top Model and actually gotten a modeling career out of it?
Oh yeah, tons of girls. See, the difficult thing is in the modeling industry, you can be very successful. You can be on the cover of Chinese Elle and Greek Vogue, and nobody in America knows that.
Right.
You understand? The modeling industry is so spread so thinly across the entire globe.
There were very few like you who became an international star.
Exactly, that's rare. And that's not necessarily going to happen anytime soon again because the supermodel has now transitioned to reality stars and singers and actresses.
Who became an international.
Did y'all hear that? Supermodel has now transitioned into reality TV stars, musicians, even celebrities. Some celebrities weren't even being invited, like a Cardi B. Tyra Banks opened up that door for Cardi B as well when it comes to her fashion, collaborations and things like that. They love her in Paris. Every time I see Cardi in Paris, she is being loved on. So it's like, I feel like that is being undermined, like the shift and the pivot that Tyra created through Top Model. It's like it's kind of being watered down because everyone is putting this blame on Tyra about the industry rules, which is what I wanted to get into next. Okay, the industry rules are very, very important because I have this question for those that feel like Tyra is the one to blame and she's the only one to blame, right? So keep in mind that Tyra is a Black woman. Okay, we have to keep that in mind. She was in this executive position. If you're a Black woman, you've ever worked in corporate and you've ever been in any type of leadership role and position, you already know what comes with that. And a lot rides on you when you're in that position because you're a Black woman and they most likely didn't really want to give you that position, but you ended up with that position And there's a lot that you experience while being in that position, while being a Black woman, and while being a leader. Okay. And then you have to deal with people that don't want to respect you in that position. People that feel like they're superior to you while you are in that job title, you're in that position. So there's a lot that you have to deal with when it comes to that. But I want to talk about the industry rules, the policies, and the standard of the industry. What a lot of people don't want to look at is that when we look through the lens of the industry, the rules of the industry were seen as official policies, meaning these were things that you had to do. These were things that you had to abide by, or you weren't getting in the door. Okay. Respectability politics were at an all-time high, and a system was built on control to disguise, but it was disguised as just rules or standards, a system that requires a specific look or behavior to succeed. And it systematically excludes anyone who doesn't naturally fit that mold. That was the standard. So I want to ask you, if Tyra was given a different set of rules, if Tyra was given a different standard or a different policy, do you think she would have showed up the same way? Do you think she would have did some of the things that she did on the show? If she was given a different set of rules, do you think that she would have still did some of the things that she did that you felt were inappropriate or wrong? That's the question that I have, because again, the rules were set. The rules were set. The policies were already written. The standard was the culture. It wasn't something that Tyra created. It was something that she herself had to abide by. So that's the question that I have for you. I personally believe that Tyra wouldn't have. I don't think that if she were given a different set of rules, that she would have done the same things that she did when she was producing the show. I just don't. I think that she may have done things a little bit differently. But another thing too that I want to point out as well is that when you look at it from a psychological standpoint, right? When we saw the girls get body shamed, when we saw the Black and brown girls get the DEI hire, but once they were hired, they weren't receiving really equal opportunities. It was almost like, okay, you met the quota of us being able to say we diversified the environment in the workspace, but we still don't want to give you a real chance. So we're going to sabotage you. And one of the things that was just so sickening to me was when it came to Giselle and Ebony, and they eliminated them, I believe, at the same time. What was so disgusting was they were saying things like, you just don't have the self-esteem. You where's the self-esteem? You don't have the confidence. And it was a form of gaslighting that really blew my freaking mind. And they had the Black woman stand there and tell them that, which was even crazier to me. But it was all orchestrated and intentional because it upholds the systemic oppression that we everyday people deal with. I mean, first of all, there's the hierarchy there. And then, of course, when it came to the Black and brown girl being addressed for how they didn't have the self-esteem, basically how they didn't meet the requirement for the job, they had the Black woman in the position to eliminate them or to fire them or to let them go, when in reality, they treated them like trash. They didn't really give them equal opportunities as the other girls that they were competing against. And they use colorism, racism, texturism, all of those things against them. And then they also body shamed Gazelle as if her body type was just too weird or too awkward. And they made them feel less than. And then they eliminated them because they were no longer needed. They had met the quota for diversifying the workspace, and now they're gone and they're out the door. And I felt like that was actually pretty disgusting. Let me see if I can find that clip, because I just could not believe that that is how they were treated on the show.
Talking to me, and they've been saying that you have been showing up ashy every day, and I'm blown away. She didn't say, oh, you're dealing with a little acne, or, what, Ebony, your skin looks a little irritated. I didn't understand why they chose those specific words, when this is a word that's been used in history to...
We already know why they chose those words. So this was exposed. Oh, we're gonna get into Janice. We're gonna get into Janice because it's so crazy how Tyra is getting dragged, but I felt like Janice was 20 times worse. 20 times worse. When it came to Tyra, there were times where I felt like she wanted to see the change within the industry. Like she tried to give pushback, but sometimes she didn't push back to me hard enough when it came to some of the things that were being done to the girls, some of the expectations and standards. But again, when you look at it from the industry lens of standards, policies, and rules, that was the standard, that was the policy, that was the rule. And the girls that signed up for this show, if you became a model around that time, if you had the desire, if you had the dream to become a model around that time, entering into a vain industry, not a wholesome industry. We're talking about vain, okay? Vanity. Everything is about how you look. It's not about your personality. It's not about any of that. It is about how you look, point blank, period. That is what you signed up for. You did not sign up for anything else. So it's kind of crazy how, people are like, well, I don't get how they could just sit up there and say that. I'm like, the whole point and purpose of the show was to rate your look so that you can become a model. It's just, in my opinion, they went to the extreme because they needed the ratings. That's the issue that I have. That was the standard around that time. It was a very vain industry. To me, it still is. I mean, we could talk about Victoria's Secret. We could talk about how for the longest, they didn't allow certain sizes on the runway. Girls at that time, they knew that. They knew that. This is something that they already knew before they got there. That's the thing that's kind of frustrating me a little bit because it's like, okay, on one hand, I understand where you're coming from, but let's be so freaking real. If you were signing up to be a model, you were signing up to be picked apart because you were supposed to be seen as a canvas to be used. You subjected yourself to that. You subjected your body to that, to be seen and to be used as a canvas. My whole thing, though, was I just felt like there was just a better way to go about some of the things that the girls were told, some of the things that were done. I also do want to, like, the standards and the rules, I felt like it's systemically created to keep women oppressed, not just black women, not just brown women, but women as a whole. Like the whole, and then with the Epstein files currently being exposed, we all know that that is all rooted in PDF file. We are now coming to the realization that the standards and rules of the industry that we know today, that we know when it comes to entertainment, is all rooted in PDF file. So then there's another layer to this. So the systemic control leads to the systemic oppression. There were young women and girls all over the world that sat and watched these women get picked apart based off of their outer appearance. So then they in return internalized that and they looked at themselves differently, which caused a psychological and spiritual warfare. But I believe that that was all intentional. It was all based in keeping the system strong, keeping the system right in place. And it attacked women. It attacked their mind right at home at a very young age. The standards, the rules were being put in your mind. You were being programmed as you watched the show. So that was something that I also felt was interesting. But the person behind it all wasn't just Tyra. It wasn't just the Asian man. Who was it at the very top of the pyramid? Who was at the very top of the pyramid?
Make us feel less than. With your skin texture, being an African American woman, it should be like butter. At the retouching session, your photo was the hardest that we had to do. Wait a minute, am I being treated differently because I'm a black girl? What's happening here? This.
Ebony was experiencing colorism. She was experiencing racism. And the reason why the show felt comfortable airing it in the way that they did was because Tyra was the one that was giving the criticism. If you notice, the other judges didn't really say anything. And if you notice, Tyra was always left up to address the black girls. Like, she was always left up to do the dirty work when it came to the black girls or the black women on the show. That was something that I also noticed as well. Like, she was supposed to be the spokesperson.
This right here, this part is really disgusting to me because they didn't want the black woman on the show. They didn't want the Latino woman on the show. They didn't want the black and brown girls on the show. And then they put them side by side to eliminate one or the other.
Right now, it's like, where is the self-esteem? Ebony, when you come into the room, we sense a chip on your shoulder, a type of anger that makes you push yourself too hard to the point where you lose focus and you become difficult to work with.
Calling her difficult to work with is so insane. That is such a low blow to me. That is Tyra. And see, that's the type of on-camera accountability that Tyra needs to take, because I'm just like, girl, really? You gonna say difficult to work with? That was so gaslighting. Oh my gosh. Listen, if Ebony crashed out, she had every right to crash out, because woo, that's crazy.
I was so brokenhearted. I go to run, and literally I wake up, the first 5 steps, my body just gave out. And I started to cry. The producers feel like, I mean, you're gonna get work.
They gaslit her so bad. That was hard to watch. That was very hard to watch. That was very, very hard to watch. And then I believe they eliminated both of them. I'm trying to see. Did they eliminate the both of them? Because I believe they eliminated Giselle. I'm trying to think if they eliminated them at the same time. Let me see.
That girl. I believed now that I wasn't good enough. I'm not gonna make it. I started.
And the reason this is so disgusting is because back then they never wanted to accept them from the very beginning. Like, that's why this is so disgusting to me. They didn't want to include them, but felt the need to include them to create that diversity, right? And it could only be one. And then they didn't even want the Latino woman on the show at all, but for whatever reason, she got a pass to get on there. And then this is how they treat you? This is how they do you? This is crazy. The black woman, she gets the villain edit, the aggressor, she's hard to work with and deal with, and then she gets the insecure edit? This is disgusting. This is disgusting.
And I'm pretty sure when it comes to Les Moonves, that was what he wanted, because that was acceptable to him. That is the agenda. That is the messaging that needed to be put out here and programmed in the minds of women. See, white women, they were attacked by the fact that they had to be really thin. That's how they were attacked. Black women were attacked because they were difficult and they were aggressive and they were ashy. And then they attacked brown women and tried to make it seem like they were just insecure and they just weren't good enough. That is how they attacked and created the spiritual warfare in the minds of women all over the world. And they programmed you at a very young age to find that as, or to make that out to be in your mind the standard. So not only were the contestants subjected to the standard, you too as the viewer were subjected to the fact that that was just the standard. So then you would question yourself, you would look at yourself differently. So the thing that is heartbreaking for me when it comes to Tyra is that she also went through that as well. She also went through the exact same thing as a black woman. So to sit up there and tell Ebony that when you most likely went through a very similar experience, because one thing about Tyra, if you watch some of her old videos of her walking the runway, she was very sassy. She had a lot of personality. Tyra didn't just put on the clothes and walk down the runway and give a little walk. Like, she had a lot of sass. She had a lot of personality. And I know for a fact when she came into the industry, that was most likely unacceptable. That was unacceptable. A little too much, and being a black woman and having sass, they call that an attitude. They call that an attitude. Oh, she got an attitude. She hard to deal with. Go look up some of Tyra's old videos of her walking the runway. She had a lot of sass, a lot of personality. Me, I felt like it was sassy, fun, flirty, and it really gave that California type of vibe. And I felt like she stood out compared to all the other women that walked the runway. But I could also see that as a young black model entering into the industry, and this is the energy that you're bringing, some would say you being a black woman, that's a little too much. So for her to sit there and tell Ebony that, disgusting. Just very, very disgusting. So another thing too that I want to point out, right? The structural lens, the environment, the physical and social environment was set up to limit choices. And this is the part of reality TV that I don't think Tyra was truly prepared for, because she was in the industry of modeling. So she knew what the rules and the standards were for modeling, but I don't think she knew the rules and the standards were for reality TV, which was why Ken Monk was also the executive producer or co-producer when it came to the show America's Next Top Model. So when it comes to reality TV, they also create this systemic control by isolating the contestants, taking away their phones, controlling their sleep, and limiting their food. And this is the culture, this is the standard, these are the rules when it comes to reality TV. Because I heard some of the comments that were being made when it came to Love is Blind, Love Island. They isolate you, they take your phone, they feed you the same foods almost every other day. And they do this intentionally because they want to get certain reactions out of you. And this is how they're able to call it reality TV. But there's a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of strings being pulled behind your scenes. There's also a lot of he say, she say to create drama, to create a hostile environment when it comes to the people that go on the show. And after doing this deep dive, if you sign up for reality TV, you are signing up to be psychologically exploited. You just got to for fame and for money, which is why it gives Hunger Games. If you go and you watch Hunger Games, right? They put them in an environment, they isolate them, they deprive them of food, they do all the steps. It really gives Hunger Game. And so what we watched was Hunger Games. We watched people who came from District 12 and District 13. They came from Ohio, they came from Chicago, they came from Atlanta, they came from Detroit. They came from their district, right? And they decided to participate in this America's Next Top Model reality TV show, and they were isolated. They were deprived of food. They were manipulated. They were also under uh, a lot of what else? They were under a lot of control, honestly. Like, there were things that they just could not do. And then the crazy thing is, if they were eliminated, they were put up in a hotel, isolated further, and then they weren't able to tell anyone or talk to anyone about the show. That doesn't sound like Hunger Games to y'all? That don't sound like Hunger Games? And what do I say in my conspiracy theories? I say things like, they put the truth in your face and then they call it fiction. That's what they do. As above is so below. They put the truth in your face and then they call it fiction. Why have we as a society normalized reality TV where people are psychologically exploited for fame, money, and the opportunity to be on TV? Why have we normalized that? Because that's what they did in Hunger Games. They were on TV, they competed, they had challenges. The only thing in Hunger Games is that some people actually die. That's it. But the whole point is so that they could live a better life and be able to live among the privileged, right? The rich and the wealthy if they were to win. It's the same thing, y'all. We're seeing it play out in the same way. It's just reality TV. So that was one interesting thing that I noticed about America's Next Top Model. I'm like, damn. And then this is just exposing reality TV as a whole, the industry in itself. What are you really supporting? Because we can talk about baddies. Squid Games is another one. We could talk about baddies. We could talk about how those women are being exploited as well. But when I said, hey, Natalie Nunn is exploiting those girls, that is what they're doing. Y'all drag Tyra Banks, but then you don't want to hold Natalie Nunn accountable because she's a part of baddies. All I'm asking is for people to be consistent. Wherever you stand, for me to take you serious, please just be consistent. I don't care what it looks like, just be consistent in your point of view or your opinion. Also, within the environment, it strips away their autonomy. Okay? Same thing we've seen in Hunger Games, making it easier to manipulate them. Not to mention, they choose young women who are in the cycle of debt and dependency, young women who often come from low income backgrounds. Sounds like Hunger Games to me. This was the same cycle that Tyra survived while also being elevated within the system, allowing her to participate in the power dynamic but not have any real control. And the only power dynamic that Tyra had was creator. Of course, they use the Black woman, they suck her for her creativity, and then if it falls or if there's anything to be blamed, she's the one that's going to take that fall. But she was just the creator of this show. There are just too many people pulling the strings above her to really be like, oh, she's the one that is truly responsible. I feel like they all could take some responsibility at the end of the day. But to blame it all on Tyra, like I said, it's just intellectually lazy to me. So let's see. Then we could get into the situation with Shani in the hot tub. Again, if you noticed, this truly was Ken's fault, in my opinion. Let me see if I can find it. Because he was the one that kept recording and he could have stopped. Let me see. Let me pull up my other. I don't know why he did not stop recording.
You remember the story with Shandy? I do remember her story. It's a little difficult for me to talk about production because that's not my territory.
Was there ever a sense of like, hey, we need to...
He was the one that was truly responsible about why those cameras kept rolling. Tyra is responsible for why she decided to exploit what happened to Shani on her Tyra Banks show. That was disgusting. But Ken is the one that is really responsible for why those cameras kept rolling and they did not stop.
The camera's off. You know, we treated Top Model as a documentary. And we told the girls that on day one, when they would show up, we would go over the rules with them. There's going to be cameras with you 24/7, day in and day out, and they're going to cover everything, the good, the bad, and everything in between. No matter.
And the reason I'm pointing this out is because, again, Ken was the one that was over the logistics for the set of America's Next Top Model. He was the one that was over the cameras in the models' apartments and in the models' quarters. He was the one that was responsible when it came to the set and how things were operating on the set, even when they traveled. And I feel like that's important to mention because I don't understand why I'm not seeing Ken and Tyra be held accountable. That would make more sense to me. I'm just seeing Tyra everywhere. And I'm just like, wait a minute. This man did a lot. He had a lot to do with a lot of the things that the girls were experiencing. And why is this important? Because it's a man. It's a man. I don't know what it's going to take for the girls to decenter men enough, just enough to hold men accountable. But you have the Asian man, You have the Caucasian man. We don't see them plastered anywhere. It's blame the woman. But a lot of the disgusting things where the girls were being exploited in the ways that they were being exploited, and then you have to question the type of men that were behind it. Les Moonves. I mean, you have to start asking some serious questions. You have to. You have to. Because Ken, what did you find that was just so necessary to record when it came to Shanny in the hot tub? What was so interesting about that?
What happens while you're on camera, we're going to document all of that.
I know the girls, they were doing their evening hanging with the guys. We were off, and then we got word. Shandy's having sex in the shower with a guy. I was like, wait, what? And the rule.
And see, this is messy too. And then another thing about reality TV that I don't think Tyra considered before getting involved with reality TV is how messy it is. Now, why was Jay Manuel told about this incident? Well, because he's a commentator on the show. So is he told the full details? Probably not. There are probably some details that are left out intentionally to create more of a stir, to create a little confusion. Because when you create confusion, then you create drama. So of course they're not going to tell him the truth. They're not going to tell him the play-by-play. They're not even going to tell Tyra the truth or the real play-by-play because they're also on the show. And that's why I question Tyra. Like, Tyra, did you really know what you were signing up for? Because I think Tyra would have been safer if she were just behind the scenes, but she chose to be behind the scenes and she chose to be on camera being a part of the show. So there are things that they're probably not going to tell her on purpose because it creates confusion, it creates miscommunication, it creates drama, it creates ratings for the show. So I believe when it came to Ken, there were things that he intentionally did not tell Tyra because she was also a commentator on the show. She was a known character on the show. Even though she had the executive producer label and status, but because she was on the show and she was playing as this mentor and things like that, I think that there were things that she was not told. There were things that she was told, and there were things that were intentionally left out that she did not know. And it was all in purpose, or it was all on purpose to create good TV.
Top model was, if you went into a bathroom alone, a camera could not follow you in. But of course, when she went into the shower, she was technically not alone. So the cameras went in and they captured it. I don't know whose decision it was, but as producers do, this was a story point now, and we're gonna see it all the way through.
Disgusting. I don't think Tyra found out until after the fact. I do think that she could have known by the time it reached Tyra Banks, her show, like her talk show that she had. But I don't think that she knew at the time that she was on America's Next Top Model. I don't think she knew yet. But by the time it reached Tyra Banks, her talk show, at that point, girl, you should have formed your own opinion by that time about what actually happened to Shanny. And I felt like it was lazy for her to just kind of go with what other people are telling you. Like, girl, go ask. You're wanting to portray yourself as this mentor. Well, go have a real conversation with Shanny instead of getting this he say she say from third parties. Like, go actually talk to her. You wanted to be the mentor, but go have a real conversation about what happened to her instead of all of this. I don't like third party. I don't like he say she say conversations. I pick up the damn phone or I'm gonna go talk to you face to face. I don't like that at all. That's how mess and drama starts, and that is exactly what happens. So another thing too that I wanted to point out is the monopoly that I talked about as well.
I remember I was getting a phone call from the network every day saying they need to talk to me. They need to talk to me. And I just kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. My assistant would me telling you this. They really need to talk to you. They really need to talk to you. And finally, the head of the network, he said, get her on the phone now. I took his call, and I'll never forget.
So this is when she had to fire the Jays and Nigel. And a lot of people overlooked, she said, there are no sacred cows. I think she kept saying that there are no sacred cows. So that means that even though she was technically under contract with her brand Top Model, that even though she was the one placed in the position to fire the Jays and Nigel, that her position was also in jeopardy, that she wasn't safe. And this was her own show. And eventually they ended up firing her as well. Another thing that I kind of feel like the internet is being disingenuous about, because I think it's just easier to not consider the nuances of the situation, to just villainize Tyra, is that people expect for her to be the employer when it comes to the Jays and Nigel, and to have like this intimate, close relationship, like this friendship. I do believe in the beginning when Tyra first got into starting America's Next Top Model, that she had very close relationships with the Jays. She had very close relationship with a lot of people that made her show become a thing, like a reality, right? Made it real, made her dreams come true. But after a while, with her boss being on her back, breathing down her neck, I think that there were times where, as an executive producer, a Black woman in leadership, I think there was a point within the dynamic or the relationship with the Jays and Nigel and anyone else, that she kind of had to pull back a little bit from being so intimate, so friendly, because when you're in that position, you have to make tough judgment calls. Like, you can't be super nice all the time. You can't be super friendly. You can't sit up and tell them all of your business or tell them everything that's going on, because the position in which you're in. So I think people are kind of being a little bit unfair and unreasonable, because technically when we talk about Miss J Alexander, when we talk about J Manuel, when we talk about Nigel, and when we talk about the business in the industry and how messy it got towards the end, people are expecting her to just go run and be a friend. But it's like, it's the reason why she had gotten to the position that she was in. It's like she had to kind of separate herself and remove herself from that role, even though that's how the relationship started off. Jay Manuel, she was friends with Jay Manuel. She was friends with Miss J Alexander. She was friends with them. But it's like, once her career really started to take off, she kind of had to distance herself. She kind of had to separate herself. And it's crazy because when Jay Manuel talked about how he reached out to Tyra to let her know that he was basically wanting to quit the show, and she responded, I am disappointed. She responded that way because that was the boss responding. That wasn't Tyra, the friend, that responded. And he was mad and he was offended by that. But the reason why the boss had to respond, I am disappointed, because of the contracts, because of the legal side of him coming to her, telling her that. Because now, because of where she is, she's obligated to tell her boss. And so she has to sit in and listen in on things that are being said about Jay Manuel from the business side of her show, and the fact that she chose to hire Jay Manuel. So it's like, listen, it's crazy. It's like people were expecting Tyra to be the boss and the friend. And I'm like, in what world? Like, what world? And listen, they could have been friends, right? Like, it could have started off that way. But once we talk about like business, and I believe Tyra naively thought that she could be both in the beginning, but when things started to become real and her show started to become successful, I think she realized she had to choose. Am I going to be a friend, or am I going to be a boss? And I believe that she ultimately chose herself, and she decided to be a boss. And then it's really crazy how Miss J Alexander, she was upset that, oh, Tyra sent me some flowers for my birthday and then she fired me. And I think Tyra was really between a rock and a hard place. It's like, okay, I'm trying to still show up as a friend, but I still have to be a boss at the end of the day. And Miss J was upset about that. And it's like, listen, we're all on it under contract. It's like either I'm gonna do my job or I'm gonna be fired too. So I felt like she was put in a really weird, awkward position. And I really want to know, if you were in a similar situation, if you were in a similar position, what would you have done? Would you have chose Jay Manuel, Miss Alexander, and Nigel over your own career? Or would you have chose Miss J, Jay Manuel, Nigel? Would you have chose them? And then I want to also ask you this. Would Miss J Alexander, would Jay Manuel, would Nigel, if they were in the same position as Tyra, would they have chose her? That's what I want to know. Then another thing too, right? It had been, I think this is the reason why Tyra never reached out. Well, no, she did reach out to Miss J after the stroke, but she sent a text. And she said that she would come visit him. Tyra lives in Australia. She does not live in the United States anymore. So that's a very crucial part. You know, it's not like she's still in New York and she just refuses to go see Miss J. Alexander. Also, around the time that he had this stroke, the pandemic, this all happened in 2022. She's in Australia. You know what I mean? Like, I think people are not considering the nuances surrounded around the situation that happened to Miss J when it happened. Also, the fallout of their relationship, right? So, how do you show up to be there for a friend that you haven't spoken to in like 15 years or so that went on, I forget, did an interview? I'm trying to see if I can find the interview. Went on an interview and it was basically Jay Manuel, Miss J, and Nigel against Tyra Banks. Like that's how it kind of came across in the interview that they did. And it was the three of them. And I think at that point, Tyra was like, okay, things are getting messy. The industry is trying to pin us together. I'll just remove myself. But maybe she did that and she didn't have a conversation. Maybe she did that and she didn't really tell them.
I've worked with Tyra from way back when. Her reputation.
And this is the thing. It's like, here they are talking about Tyra, her reputation. This is a Black woman that is in a leadership role, executive producer, where she employed them. And look at how they're phrasing and conducting this interview.
She perceives her. She is tough to work for.
And then, of course, the question that was posed directly to me.
How tough was Tyra to work for?
Jay grabs my knee like, go ahead, girl. Like, it's just like, Jay, like, why are you doing this to me? We had to speak very carefully.
And again, they're speaking on her character as a boss, not as a friend, as a boss. I mean, it's kind of crazy to me. Am I the only one that's kind of like, okay, that's a little unfair because if I'm in this position, right, these are my employers, I don't expect for them to really like me that much because if they like me too much, then they're not going to respect me and they're not going to respect the things that I require of them when it comes to the job that I hired them for. And I don't think people are really considering that. Because if you've never been in the position of leadership, right? And you have to manage people, you can't be like too friendly with them because then they're not going to take you serious when it comes to how you're supposed to manage them. The quotes that you have to meet, the quotas that you have to meet when it comes to your own job title. So it just creates like this weird it creates this weird environment. Like it's not gonna be. I think like people expect for them to just be friends because it's the industry and things, and I think that that's very delusional. And the reason I think it's very delusional is because the industry doesn't have friends. Like Drake literally came out with a whole song, "No friends in the industry," like no new friends, no new friends, no friends in the industry. That's for a reason. It's because everyone has a job to do. Like, it's kind of hard. And then even Olandria is a prime example of this. You know, she tried to make friends in the industry. She tried to make friends on the show, and she ultimately ended up remaining friends with her homegirls that she met when she was in college, that she met when she wasn't before fame. Why did she do that? Because there's really no real friends in the industry, you all. Like, that's just the honest to God truth about the situation. And I feel like people are not being real. Like, we were not being real. There's business, and there's personal. And I believe Tyra messed up because she was friends with them at first. And then she became the boss and things changed. And I don't think that they were prepared for that. I don't think they were. And I don't think that they were prepared for the amount of pressure that Tyra was under in that position, especially as a Black woman. And you have to deal with all of that, and then you still try to show up and be friends to them. It's hard. It puts you in a very weird position. So I don't think people are really considering that at all. But again, if she was white and male, do you think that they would be sitting up here having this conversation? Do you think that they would have phrased the question in the interview in the way that they did? I'm going to answer that. No. No, they wouldn't have. No.
You know, contractually at the time, you know, there are only certain things you can speak about around production and what have you legally. Ken, Tyra, they were all watching us live. I know them.
And again, Jay talks about how he legally couldn't say certain things. And you don't think that Tyra couldn't legally say certain things? They were all under contract. She's in the boardroom with Les Moonves and all of corporate property. You think that she could just come right out and just say whatever she wants to say? You think she can really be as transparent? Probably not. I'm going to answer that for you. Hell no. No. This is why we're addressing the hierarchy, because everyone wants to focus on this part, the lower half, but no one wants to talk about the top half. The top half that Tyra had to deal with, where they're faceless. So you don't see them. You see her face, but you don't see all the people behind her that are pulling strings. Like this lady here. Let me pull her up too. Her name is Dawn. Nobody wants to talk about her. And I'm like, she had a major role to play too when it came to the show and Tyra. She talks about the network standards.
Thinking to yourself, okay, like, can we air it? No, I never thought about, you know, can we air it, can't we air it? Good television is good television.
She was over Tyra as well. She gave Tyra the opportunity. Let's talk about the opportunity that Tyra was given. Okay, the network was in a crisis. It had low ratings. That is how they brought Tyra in to the network. Okay. That's how they brought her in. She was supposed to come in like Olivia Pope of reality TV and save the network. That was her job. That was the reason why she was hired. She wasn't hired for any other reason. She was hired to come in and save the day. Okay. And this is the issue that I feel like people refuse to acknowledge, that Tyra was operating within a larger system that often treats Black women in leadership differently. Am I lying? Please tell me I'm lying. Oh no, they don't treat us differently in leadership. No, they no, they don't do that. So I have to bring this up because oftentimes people do not understand the glass cliff. It refers to the phenomenon where women and marginalized groups are more likely to be appointed to leadership roles during periods of crisis or turn or downturn when the risk of failure is highest. And that's exactly what happened. For Black women in executive roles, this effect is compounded by double jeopardy. That's why I use the analogy Monopoly. The intersection of racism, sexism, leading to several specific dynamics. Black women are often hired when the organization is struggling, facing a PR scandal, or under intense pressure to diversify quickly. They frequently face higher performance standards and less grace for mistakes compared to their white or male counterparts. Once in the cliff position, they may be denied the necessary resources, mentorship, or institutional backing required to turn the situation around. If the organization continues to struggle, the leader is often blamed and replaced infrequently by a white savior, often a white male, resetting the cycle. So this was the larger system that Tyra was operating in. This was the larger system that I felt like the documentary could have put a little bit more focus on, considering the position in which Tyra was in and the system that she was operating in, that they were all operating in. But when it comes to us as a society, we always like to focus on the lower half of the system, not the middle and not the top, because that is what is upholding the systemic control. And that is what is controlling all of us, programming all of us to think a certain way, behave a certain way. It's the reason why we at home have accountability to take, because we, the viewers, watched. We supported it. We kept tuning in. And then we kept demanding more, more, more. We want more. We want more. We want to see them go through more extreme challenges. That's what we want to see.
I believe they're doing that moment again. You have to keep one-upping yourself.
Now the pressure was high for the network. How do we maintain this and grow this audience?
It was a time in the world where there was a show Fear Factor and Survivor and all of these things of like pushing the limits and all of that. And so we kept pushing and we kept creating more and more and more. You guys were demanding it. The viewers wanted more.
Now, how do I know Tyra not lying about that? Because I'm experiencing it as a YouTuber. That's how I know. Anytime that I'm not kicking up mess and drama, I actually had someone comment in one of my videos saying, Yoni, we don't want educational. We want your raw, opinionated, reactive commentary. We don't want a reflective, thought out commentary response. We don't want that. Like, what? But it shows. It shows in my viewership. It shows in my engagement. It shows that if you're not talking about mess, you're not creating mess, you're not creating drama, you're not promoting violence. If you're not promoting toxicity on social media, you're not really getting the engagement and viewership compared to a show like Baddies. I mean, think about Basketball Wives, right? Basketball Wives was another one. And people support that show. People support these shows that facilitate the most extreme things to occur in order for it to be entertaining. Like, that's the reality. We could even talk about Jerry Springer and all the remixes that they made off of that show. You know, there are people talking about how back in the day, it was unheard of, but they would literally set those people up to get those reactions. So a lot of times when people did the Jerry Springer show, they didn't even know what they were signing up for. They just got there and found out that this all was happening. And a lot of that stuff was caught on camera in real time. And that was their real reaction. But the way that they got them there was through lies and manipulation. So, I mean, we support it. Like, we have to be real. And when I say we, I say the culture. It may not be you directly, but I'm saying like the culture. You, and then it's crazy because I feel like I'm being gaslit, but it's like, look at the Shade Room, look at Baller Alert, look at look at Neighborhood Talk, look at the things that go viral on TikTok, look at Twitter X. It just looks differently. Back then, it was TV. It was reality TV. Reality TV was messy and it had a lot of drama. Now, it's just social media. Now, people look for that through social media or Baddies the Show. That's just like the most popular thing. But what I'm saying is, as a society, as a culture, we keep recycling through the same thing. So we can sit up here and blame Tyra, but I know some of you are going to go support Baddies. I know some of you would still support Basketball Wives if it would run again, but they canceled it because Shawnee, she went too damn far with that situation that happened with Jackie and her daughter as a first lady of a church, which that's insane. I mean, like, we keep supporting it though, like we can be upset at Tyra for, the role that she decided to play on the show, but we also have to look at ourselves as well because we support it. That is just what we do. We support it. We watch it. We make it go viral. We sensationalize it. We are also a part of the problem. It's not just Tyra. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it is the truth. It's the truth. We thought that it was okay and we thought that it was acceptable at that time. But the grace that I give to viewers, to be fair, because this is me considering the nuances, even when I say that we too should take accountability, is that we were all programmed. Our parents were programmed through television. Our grandparents were programmed through television. Our great great grandparents were programmed through newspapers. So it's like I can say that we need to be accountable, but we were also programmed. These things are normal. They're normal to us because they are programmed to us in a way that is normal or that is labeled entertaining. Like, this is what we're supposed to be entertained by. Fame and power and money, like that is what we're supposed to want to achieve in our life because that's what success is for us. And that's how the world defines success, is that we need money, we need power, we need fame to be successful. It's a lot of that, it's programming. So it's like I can say that we need to be held accountable, and I absolutely do stand by that. However, a lot of us are programmed though too. Like, that's something that we also have to consider, is that we're programmed. Our parents were programmed, our grandparents were programmed, our great great grandparents, they were programmed, but like I said, they were programmed through the newspaper. And if you notice too, like your parents, they're still being programmed by watching the news. They believe everything that's on the news, but that's their programming. Our programming is social media. And you're going to start seeing a bunch of like fake videos, AI videos that are going to be passing as legitimate, right? But it's going to be fake. I mean, are y'all ready for what's to come? Because it's going to be a lot of stuff coming. A lot of warfare going on social media because a lot of people are addicted now. A lot of people don't want to go look and do research. Like, prime example, the narrative is to drag Tyra, and I have a good feeling that the reason the documentary focused on mainly Tyra was because that was the social media narrative. The social media narrative was to just drag Tyra, blame Tyra. But how is it that when I started to look beyond the documentary, the things that were being sensationalized around Tyra's name, how was it that when I deep dive and look beyond the headlines and look beyond the gossip, then I'm like, wait a minute, there's a whole system here. And again, why does it matter? Because again, if Tyra was to, God forbid, pass, if she was to die tomorrow, she would just be replaced and the system continues. So if you replace the person like Tyra in the position that she was in, and even if you replace the CEO, which the CEO was replaced, we saw that within the documentary, the outcomes remain the same. If the underlying rules and power structures don't change, then the machine keeps running just the same way, regardless of who's pushing the buttons. And so Tyra, she was the one pushing the buttons, but they'll replace her with someone else. So again, you just being mad at Tyra is intellectually lazy. You need to be mad at the entire system. Okay. And we can also talk about why, because everyone's pointing at Tyra, right? But I'm like, look at Janice. Look at this. Look at Janice.
The law is too old to be starting.
In fact, she's huge. She's not going to be a top model.
She won't. That's
She's
the
working
reality.
for a car toppling company.
Janice offered that very harsh opinion that absolutely exists in the industry.
Harsh opinion that absolutely exists in the industry. Did we not hear what Janice said? Let me play it back. let me play it back. Cause that's crazy. And who do you think she was talking about? Who was that? Oh, that's a black woman, ain't it? Oh, yeah. But that's not gonna get no. Black women are unprotected. Janice is protected, so Janice can say whatever the fuck she want to say. And it's a black woman. Oh, she can really say whatever the fuck she want to say and not be held accountable at all because she's talking about a black woman and she's a white woman. The system protects her in that way.
The law is too old to be starting.
In fact, she's huge. She's not going to be a top model. She won't. That's
she's
the
for
reality.
a car toppling company.
Janice offered that very harsh.
Now, what is Janice pushing? She's reinforcing the systemic control that leads to women being oppressed, feeling the need to be thin, hell, white. We might as well go ahead and just say white and thin. And that's because that was the standard that was also forced onto her. It's the reason why, listen, it's the reason Trump is in office, because those women can experience that type of abuse and still vote a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So she wasn't held accountable because she's protected. Yeah, she said huge.
That absolutely exists in the industry.
My name is John, and I'm going to be your trainer. We're going to do a little test, height and weight.
I had an eating disorder.
Terrific. 114.
And this is why they struggle. Like 5'10" and 114 pounds is so insane, y'all. That is insane. That is crazy. And then the crazy thing is, it all leads back to PDF file. We know that 2026. That's what it leads back to. 114 pounds, 5'10". I'm not sure how old she was. She may have been like maybe 19, 20 years old. But that's really, that's insane. That is insane. But that's where it's rooted from. So then we have Janice again.
She should learn how to walk.
And cycle 2, it became sport for Janice to bait Tyra.
The body could just slim.
Oh, then they pinned Janice and Tyra against each other. Now, why would they do that? Reality TV. Reality TV, that's why they did it. So they pinned the black woman. Well, no, they pinned Janice against Tyra. And this is Tyra's show, right? But they put her in this position where she is supposed to be superior to Tyra. Why? Why?
150 pounds. That would be good. Then she'd be 30 pounds. That would be better.
It was definitely getting to her. And I was like, why is she doing that to her? And Tyra would talk to me.
And then again, right? Tyra, a black woman in this executive producer seat. And this is what she has to deal with on her own show, right? The one that has all of the control, right? 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 But let's all remember, Tyra is under contract. She was not comfortable with it. Even Jay Manuel, who cannot stand her till this day, is literally saying what was going on between her and Janice on her own show, that she had so much control over. If she had so much control, then why was Janice there? She could easily fire Janice, right? But I don't believe Tyra had any control over who she could keep on her own show and who she could fire. Because again, she was co-owner, most likely only had 25%, and it was the brand, it was the format, it was the template. It was not the film. It wasn't the logistics of the production that she had any real ownership over. So she had to deal with this. She had to deal with Janice.
I let it go. She's driving me crazy, but I let it go. But I know it was getting to her. And I considered myself like besties with Tyra. And she spent a lot of time at my house, sleeping over. If I'm in LA, I would spend.
And I believe that this is where Tyra messed up. And I think she eventually had to choose. Either you're going to be the boss or you're going to be a friend. You're going to be besties. And that's crazy to say. That's crazy to say. Okay. Then what was another thing too? I don't understand Nigel. Everyone is defending Nigel, but we all know why he's being defended, because, well, he's white and he's male.
Okay, something that's bothering me as somebody that has watched every cycle of America's Next Top Model 5 times each some of them more than that. Why are y'all all on Nigel right now? Like, oh, Nigel's so fine, Nigel's so sweet and unproblematic. Do y'all have amnesia, or did you not watch the show? Because Nigel said some of the craziest stuff to the girls. I mean, he basically judged them based on how much he wanted to sleep with them or not sleep with them. So, like, girls that he found unattractive, he would talk about how unsexy they were and how, you know, they need to tone up. And, like, if there was fat shaming, Nigel was doing it. And Nigel was, you know, kind of creepy toward April and some of the other girls. Like, I just don't know where y'all are getting that Nigel is innocent.
And let's keep in mind how young these girls were.
At all. In fact, Nigel is on the more problematic side, to be honest. Remember when Cycle 10 and Anya, her prize from the challenge was winning a naked photo shoot with Nigel? Huh?
Girl, it's crazy how people have selective memory. I thought they were all problematic. Even Miss J, some of the things that he would say. Let me see if I could pull it up. Let me see.
I felt sorry for them, but I just know that it's a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Now, what if people said that about his personal situation? I felt bad for them, but I know it's a dog-eat-dog world. What if that's the same mindset that Tyra has? And it's the reason why she hasn't gone to see him. Like, you know, it's little stuff like that that I felt like people just overlooked. And I think it was in the way that the documentary was narrated. And it tried to paint out like you have the villain and then you have the victims, and then that was it. But I'm just like, oh, okay. And basically within this documentary, the girls were being psychologically abused. And then once they were psychologically abused, then they were sent home. And they felt like their dreams couldn't come true after that. They felt like they had to go back and live their regular lives after they had given up so much. They had dedicated so much time, sweat, tears. And he goes, "It's a doggy dog world." And I'm just like, "Really? That's insane." So I'm like, why is that being overlooked? I don't get why that's being overlooked. I don't understand why people didn't peep that as well. And then they also pointed out that there was a lack of integrity. And again, this is where I feel like Tyra needs to be held accountable, because basically in these clips, it was showcasing how towards the end they would pick or they would select photos that were bad on purpose, and then they would eliminate the girl or the model or the contestant. So uh I believe that Tyra gave into that as well. She chose her ego, she chose money over integrity. So the show lost its integrity towards the end there, where they would pretty much use the worst photo or choose the worst photo on purpose to eliminate the girls off the show. Crazy. Okay, let me see what else. The network standards.
When, you know, the network said to me, we're looking for a good-looking, straight, white photographer. That did eat away at me. And it's like, well, the Jays are a hit, but we're not straight, we're not white. I mean, networks are really that blunt. They know what they want to see in what role.
So I
Did you hear that? They know what they want to see and in what role. So who is they? I showed you their faces. Okay? I showed you their faces. Okay? Let me play that again. Cause I don't know why that went over so many people's heads.
I mean, networks are really that blunt. They know what they want to see in what role.
So I didn't need to be.
Now, why are they so big on wanting to see certain people in certain roles? Because it keeps up the systemic control, the systemic oppression. It programs your mind. It's still happening and it's still going on till this day. Okay? So who's at the very top? This man right here. He's at the very top. So again, when we talk about blame, I feel like there's a lot of people to blame, but I know who's to blame, and he's at the very top. And oftentimes they are faceless. I also have some more questions for you too. The whole Tiffany situation that happened, Tiffany Richards, the twice as hard. Black women in executive positions are often held to a higher standard with less support. And when it came to Tiffany Richardson and the Mean Girl edit that Tyra got, which Tyra got the Mean Girl edit, right? It just seems like when it comes to the Tiffany situation, I feel mixedly about it for two reasons. Tiffany has been speaking out on social media a lot. She's been talking out a lot, a lot, a lot. I don't see much growth. And do I feel like Tyra could have probably had that conversation privately? Absolutely. Do I think that the conversation still needed to be had? Absolutely. I do. I think that the conversation still needed to be had when it came to Tiffany. I think Tyra was frustrated because she's also in survival mode. She's in a position where she has to prove herself. And then she's looking at a younger version of herself that is refusing to do what she was willing to do in order to be successful. And I think in that moment, she projected on Tiffany in the worst way. And I felt like there was a conversation that could have been had that just needed to be done privately. But then the reason why I feel mixedly about how Tyra handled it, like the reason why she raised her voice. Now we all know, and I'm really talking to black women right now. We all know that there are some black women out here, not all, but some, where they don't listen. You can tell them with compassion, patience, understanding. You can be graceful. You can have the right tone. You can set the moon, the stars. You can show love. You can do all of that. And they still don't listen. They don't hear you. They don't take you serious. And I believe Tyra was frustrated. And I also believe that the type of black women that I'm talking about are the type of black women that were verbally abused. I talk about this all the time. These are the type of girls that most likely grew up in a household where they were verbally abused. So if you try to talk to them calmly, if you try to talk to them reasonably, you try to talk to them with understanding, you try to understand them and not just yell at them and not just aggressively try to communicate to them, oftentimes they don't really hear you. It's like you got to meet them where they are and you got to get aggressive with them and you got to get loud and you have to be very passionate when you speak to them because otherwise they're not going to listen. So when it comes to the Tyra situation, I feel mixedly about it. I felt like it was inappropriate in the sense in where it took place. I think that this could have taken place behind the scenes somewhere in a back office somewhere. I don't know. But the way she was outed and it was publicly done and she was the only one being addressed, I think that's the part that I don't like. But the part that I understand is Tyra's frustration when it came to Tiffany. That's the part that I understand. If you never had to deal with a personality like Tiffany, then I don't expect for you to get it. And the fact that Tiffany is still the same way that she was back then, maybe even just a little bit worse when it comes to just her mouth and the things that she be saying. Come on now. Come on now. I've seen some of the things that Tiffany, I'm just like, oh my God, why would she say that? Oh my God, why is she taking it there? Why is she going so far? it's like if you've never dealt with a black woman like that, I see why you feel like Tiffany is just this innocent victim, but I really don't see that. I don't. I see that she plays a role in her own self-destruction, in her own self-sabotage. And Tyra saw that for what it was. And she was frustrated and she was upset. And I felt like in that moment, she wanted to see Tiffany win, and she probably saw herself in Tiffany, and she just lost it. She just lost it. And I don't feel like it was necessarily appropriate, but I understand her frustration. I do. Not saying I agree with how she went about it, but I'm saying I understand her frustration. So I'm kind of confused to see how people are just painting Tiffany to be this victim, and it's going to blow up in your face. It's going to blow up in your face because these are the type of girls that are not accountable. It's kind of like a Huda. They're not accountable. So the only thing you're going to do is enable their poor behavior and their poor choices, and they're going to make you look crazy in the end because they need someone that's going to actually hold them accountable. And when it came to Tyra, that's what she was trying to do, but I just felt like she just went about it wrong. And I do believe that it came from a place of just frustration, and she just let it out. And I believe that that's what happened. Of course, they kept that scene in there. They could have redid it if they really wanted to. If they wanted to make it right, they had to have lawyers come on set the next day. They could have tried to bring her back and make it right with her, but they chose not to do that. So I don't know. Like I said, when it comes to Tiffany and Tyra, I feel very mixedly about it because I have dealt with black women with her personality, and they're hard to talk to. And I really believe it's because they were verbally abused in their childhood. So their nervous system is not gonna be open and receptive to you speaking to them calmly. And that is something that they themselves have to heal. But Tyra was just trying to get to her because she was on a show. It was limited time. She was in a competition and she wanted her to win. And I believe that that's what that was. Okay. Let me see. What else did I want to cover? Oh, the top model brand.
They built a whole empire, multi-million-dollar brand known as America's Next Top Model.
They built this empire off of exploiting very young girls. Disgusting. And then Tyra, the trademark top model, she doesn't even have access to that. She's not getting paid off of the trademark. She's only getting paid off of the format, the template top model, not the branding, which I felt that was interesting. So when you see top model, America's Next Top Model shirts and things like that, she's not getting paid for that. She only got paid for the format of the show.
Off the backs of every girl's dream that did
So basically what I'm saying is Tyra was also exploited as the creator.
that show, and it never became realized.
The vast majority of the girls were kind of right back at square one, or even worse.
Very sad. I also want to talk about Dany. The situation with Dany, I feel like Tyra is she owes her so much an apology. I don't think that she really truly apologized to Dany to me. And there's a part of me that feels like Dany is not going to be open to receiving an apology from Tyra, but I do believe that Tyra needs to be accountable for the experience that Dany had on the show. I felt like she was let down by Tyra because she really looked up to her as a mentor, and she knew that Dany was going to go through certain experiences, and instead of her like really preparing her for that, she kind of just dropped the ball with her and just threw her to the wolves and didn't really sit her down and have that one-on-one conversation like a real mentor should have had with her. And I felt like that was pretty disgusting. Then of course, the situation with her gap. They allowed her to have a gap.
Make it as big as you want it. She already had a tooth gap, and then they went in and surgically widened it permanently.
Getting that done for a reality competition TV show is just insane. People have told me one season that she got a gap created in a girl. Girl, that is absolutely ridiculous. What?
I actually apologize for the issue with Dany and what happened. That was between a rock and a hard place for me, because there were agents that would tell me she will not work with those teeth. It's just not going to happen. That's what they told me. And again, I could have just been quiet and let them handle it. But that's hindsight is 2020 for all of us. It just so happens that a lot of the things that were 2020 for me happened in front of the world.
And see, the thing that was confusing about the situation between Dany and Tyra that I couldn't really understand was the timeline that all of this happened. Because, okay, she's being told that Dany won't be able to get certain opportunities with the Gap. That could have been true for her, especially with her being a Black model. Okay, you know, the stakes are always higher for us. We're talking about 2013, 2004, 2005, like that era, right? So there are things that we have to do that sometimes our counterparts, our white peers, don't have to do. So I do think that there's some truth to that. However, when did she realize that Dany was never going to have the opportunities because she was on the show America's Next Top Model? When did she know that the doors were never really going to open up for her because she was on America's Next Top Model? That's the part that came across disingenuous to me when it came to Tyra. I'm like, so when did you realize that no matter what, whether she closes her gap, keeps it open, whatever, they're not willing to accept her because she was on the show America's Next Top Model? That's what I want to know. What is the timeline? There's editing involved. It seemed very choppy. They kept going back and forth, but I need to know the order in which this all occurred. Now, according to Dany, she said that she had or Tyra had a conversation with her, walked up to her and told her that she knew that certain doors were not going to open up for her, that she was going to have a very challenging time. And instead of her being there for her and supporting her through that season, because ultimately Tyra, she really can't do all that much. She may be able to do a little bit, but not all that much, because again, she's Black in the industry. So it's hard for both of these women in different positions, but I do feel like Tyra could have done more. Like, you can't tell me that she just left the girl in the apartment all alone to fend for herself. I just felt like she could have done a little bit more, in my opinion. So I also want to talk about the Kenya situation too. This part was really disgusting what they did to her. They tried to make it seem like she was just so overweight and that she needed to lose weight. And I remember the Kenya episode. It really weighed on my self-esteem as a young girl seeing her, because I'm just like, okay, she's so small. Like, she needs to lose weight, then I know I need to lose weight. Like, if she needs to lose weight, then I definitely need to lose like 50 pounds. And I'm like 180. 5'10", 180, and I'm like a size 8. So I'm just like, okay, well, if she needs to lose weight, so do I. I guess we all do, right? So I feel like that was pretty disgusting. Another disgusting part when it came to Kenya wasn't just the body shaming, the fact that they tried to make it seem like she was eating so much when they would just chop up and edit the video to make it seem like she was eating more than what she was eating. That's crazy. But also the fact that um how they handled the situation with her being assaulted by the male model, and how they didn't really support her, not during, not after. And they kind of gaslit her like, hey, this is part of the industry. This is what you have to deal with. This is what you have to go through when it comes to the modeling industry. So that was really weird. They didn't really support her. They didn't try to protect her. They didn't do anything. They just basically was like, girl, this is just part of the industry. Crazy, crazy. And when you think about Les Moonves and his position and the things that was going on at that level, it's not shocking that Kenya experienced that while the reality show was filming. It's honestly not that insane to me to wrap my head around, honestly. And then also, they allowed the plus size model on the show, but they didn't want to give her a fair chance. To me, I feel like this is the average American woman's body. They didn't want to give her a fair chance. They only did it to please the viewers, but they didn't really want to welcome her into the industry until I think like much later. Cause I don't know what year her cycle took place. Her name, I forget her name. Whitney. It didn't seem like it seemed like she won the competition simply because of the viewers, not because they truly wanted to welcome her into the modeling industry. And I felt like that was interesting. It was almost like, oh, okay, we'll let you win the competition, but we're like the industry really isn't ready for your body type, your body size. So it was just kind of crazy. It's like, so what was the point of doing all of that? But again, she did open doors. A lot of these girls that didn't have the best experience, I don't think that they understand that they were a part of opening doors for the girls that came behind them. It's the reason why Gen Z can say things like, oh, this is so wrong. This is so inappropriate. The reason why you're able to say that is because these women had to go up against so much. They had to go up against the industry standards, policies, rules in order for you to be able to say that's wrong. Why was this okay? Because at that time, it was. Not saying I agree. I'm just saying this was also disgusting. The Dion situation with her mother experiencing DV, and then they had her pose like that. That was very disgusting. They wanted to get a reaction out of her. They wanted for her, a Black woman, to basically spaz out and probably later call her hard to work with and difficult. We all know that that was to come, but them knowing about what happened to her mother and then making her pose like that was just so abusive. That was very abusive. That was abuse. I don't care what anyone says. I cannot believe that they did that. And I don't think us, the viewers, I don't think at the time we knew or we put two and two together. I'm not really sure. It's been a while, but oof, that was awful. That was terrible. I don't know. And again, who was behind this? Ken. Ken was behind this. Ken was behind the logistics of the show when it came to producing the show. He was the one that came up with these crazy ideas about getting these girls to pose within these themes that the modeling industry in the real modeling industry doesn't even require you to do. It was crazy. So it was just done for TV and that was it. I want to say that's pretty much it. Let me make sure I covered everything. Oh yeah, the Tiffany situation. I didn't want to play that. I mean, you've seen the Tiffany situation. You've seen it once, you've seen it before. I do want to talk about this.
They were so mean to the girls about their bodies. This is a vain competition. What are we talking about? Maybe cycle 1, cycle 2.
I think like that's the thing that's kind of like frustrating me was the competition was very vain. I don't think they understood how vain the modeling industry can be, but I think it's very vain. I think when you consider modeling for Instagram, it can be very vain as well. Anything that has to do with your appearance and how good you look, how well you can wear certain things, like it's going to be very vain. Like people are going to clock you on how you look because that's part of the environment. Like that's what you're signing up for. And I think people are kind of downplaying that a little bit as if these girls didn't know what they were signing up for. I don't think that when it came to the reality TV side of it, that these girls knew what they were signing up for. But when it comes to wanting to be a model back then, they definitely knew what they were signing up for. So when it came to the reality TV side, like the mess, the drama, the manipulation, them being deprived of food, them being psychologically manipulated and things like that. I don't believe that they knew what they were signing up for when it came to reality TV. But the vain modeling industry, the standards, the rules, the expectations, it's kind of hard to believe that the girls didn't know what they were signing up for when it came to that side of America's Next Top Model.
They were so mean to the girls about their bodies. This is a vain competition. What are we talking about? Maybe cycle 1, cycle 2, I could understand those girls may be upset because they didn't know what was coming. But cycle 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, I don't think y'all want to hear my true opinion on the Tyra Top Model documentary. You guys aren't ready. They are models. It is like being in a pageant and saying, why are you judging how they walk and talk and how their hair looks? I think the villain here is reality TV in general. You Gen Zs, younger Gen Zs, you guys are the worst people to deal with. Because there is no grace. There's no, room for error. People make mistakes. Who the hell are you? I like to look at a situation more logically. I've always been like this. Maybe it's the PCOS making me more manly. I don't know. Anywho, from what I gathered, everyone is right in some ways and everyone is wrong in some ways. Another thing is the fashion industry just changed. Why did the fashion industry change? Oh, wait. Because of Tyra Banks. Who else opened up the industry for large women, for black women, for women who had an accent? Because before you couldn't have an accent like that. And now you can. Because of Tyra. Okay? Tyra is just like, hey, this is a show. What would you do? I'll end with this. The same judgment you pass on others is the same judgment God is going to judge you with. Okay? I forgive Tyra. I give Tyra grace. I give Tyra another chance because why not?
Now she's wanting to relaunch America's Next Top Model. She's wanting to reboot it. Do you think that it's going to be the same thing, or do you think that it will be in the way that she originally wanted her show to be? I have a feeling that if she were to bring it back, this will be the show that she always wanted. But before, she had to get her foot in the door. She had to show people that she could actually produce a show. She could create a successful show. And I think if they were to bring her back today, I think that it would be the original America's Next Top Model that she had in mind when she first started out. I think that now that she's created a name for herself, she has a reputation that she can make a show like that successful. I think that it would be a lot different. And I know a lot of people are wanting to cancel her already, but maybe this is what she wanted to do, like her rebooting it and being able to do it in a different era. Maybe this is what she's wanting to do because this is always what she wanted for her show. I mean, I don't think people are considering that. I think people think that, oh, she wants to just bring it back just to bring it back and then that's it. And do the same thing that she did before. I think she's wanting to bring it back so that she can do it in the way that she always wanted to do it, but she just didn't have the opportunity to do it because, again, they hired her in the middle of a crisis. Okay, we talked about the glass cliff and the expectations that come with that when you are a Black woman in a leadership position and role. So that was something that I think people need to consider, that maybe you should be open to it. I mean, hell, if you don't like it and you feel like it's the same thing that, they did in the first 25 cycles, then just don't watch it. But I think you should be open to seeing if Tyra has changed and if she has grown and if she has taken accountability. I prefer to see people take accountability through actions, through change, not just talking on a documentary. So honestly, if you want to know if she really has changed and she really is moving in a different way, you should encourage her to launch her show. That's what I think. I think that it should be rebooted because it needs to be it just needs to be redeemed. If it's going to be done, it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done correctly. But I'm not against it coming back, being rebooted, and seeing if the culture can redeem itself. And all of us, honestly, like even us viewers that participated in watching the show, to see if we can redeem ourselves about what we support, what we watch, what we consider to be trendy, what we consider to be attractive, what we consider to be beauty. It would be interesting to see what it looks like in 2026. I mean, social media has allowed people to be themselves. We've seen so many people become famous that didn't have the look, right? So I don't know, maybe it would be different. We don't know. But I do think that we should be open to it to see if Tyra will redeem herself and see if she truly is responsible and accountable in the way that we hope that she is, or the way that we think that she is. But the only way we will know, she would have to show you. It's something to think about. Let me know what you think when it comes to this deep dive. Again, do you still think that Tyra is the one that should be mainly blamed for what took place on the show? I really don't think that the men are being held accountable. And I think that that is very important, because I believe that some of the beauty standards that were being pushed didn't come from women, they came from men. And that is that is something worth mentioning to me. I just feel like that needs to be mentioned. I don't know why we are skipping over that part, because that is very important. A lot of the things that were being pushed, a lot of the things that was left to be watched through the eyes of young women and girls, all started because a man approved it, or a man asked for it, or a man was like, yeah, that's what we want to see. And I think that that is worth saying. I think that that is worth mentioning, because to blame the woman is kind of just to blame her and that's it. It's kind of insane. And once again, these men are not being held accountable. So y'all let me know. Comment down below. Give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching my breakdown. Let me know what else you would like to see. And I hope to see you in my next one.
This is my opinion. I'm free to state my opinion anytime I like, right? Thank you. I don't want you to feel like that, but yeah, feel like that. This is my opinion. I'm free to state my opinion anytime I like, right? Thank you. I don't want you to feel like that, but yeah, feel like that.